Returning from my business trip, I walked into a house I no longer recognized, utterly transformed by my daughter-in-law. "My parents will be making their home here with us now," Serafina announced, that same saccharine smile pasted on her lips, never quite reaching her calculating eyes. "It's simply more efficient to have all our dependents centralized." Barely an hour later, panic began to ripple across her meticulously composed face. "Why are the authorities here searching for me? If you're observing this unfold, do consider subscribing and let me know your vantage point. But allow me to rewind a little and unveil how a perfectly mundane Wednesday evening spiraled into the most spectacularly satisfying confrontation of my 68 years. I am Eleanor Vance, and I had foolishly believed I truly understood my daughter-in-law. I thought I grasped the precarious truce we'd maintained since my son, Liam, married Serafina 8 years prior. I was profoundly mistaken about absolutely everything. My trip to San Francisco had been standard procedure, overseeing new project bids, strategizing with key investors, the routine responsibilities of managing Vance Holdings since my husband Arthur's passing 4 years ago. Liam had taken over the daily operations, but I still commanded the critical financial oversight and client relations, or so I'd always presumed. My flight home was delayed, meaning I arrived at my residence, the home Arthur and I had painstakingly built 3 decades ago, close to 10 hour on a Wednesday night. The porch light, usually a beacon when I traveled, was conspicuously dark. Fumbling with my keys in the oppressive gloom, I finally pushed the door open, only to freeze. My grand foyer and living area had undergone a radical metamorphosis. The rich, inviting sapphire walls Arthur had painted himself were now stark, unwelcoming gray. My cherished antique writing desk, Arthur's favorite armchair, even the vibrant tapestry my grandmother had hand-stitched, had vanished, replaced by austere metallic furniture that wouldn't look out of place in a corporate lobby. "Surprise!" Serafina materialized at the top of the sweeping staircase, her blonde hair impeccably coiffed despite the late hour. "I hope you don't object, but I took the liberty of modernizing a few aspects while you were away." I slowly lowered my carry-on, struggling to process the visual assault. "Where are my furnishings, Serafina?" "Oh, that old clutter. I've sent it off. Such a relief to clear out all those dusty relics." She descended with an exaggerated flourish, clearly reveling in her triumph. "The entire house feels so much more current now, don't you concur?" Arthur's beloved reading nook, the intricately carved chess table where we'd spent countless evenings with the children, all irrevocably gone. "You had no justifiable right." "Actually, I did." Serafina's smile sharpened, a predatory glint in her eyes. "Liam signed the necessary documents months ago. As his spouse, I possess the legal authority to make all household decisions. Besides, you'll need to adapt to sharing the premises." That was when she unleashed the final blow about her parents relocating. Her parents, who had never contributed a single day's labor in their lives, subsisting entirely on government stipends and Serafina's increasingly extravagant generosity. I wanted to unleash a primal scream. I yearned to demand a full account, but an unsettling intensity in Serafina's gaze warned me to proceed with extreme caution. This wasn't some impulsive, redecorating whim. This was meticulous, premeditated, a calculated act of displacement. "And pray tell, where precisely do you envision everyone sleeping?" I inquired, my voice surprisingly level. "Well, naturally, you'll relocate to the smaller guest room. Mother and Daddy require the master suite. They need the expansive space for all their therapeutic equipment." Serafina calmly inspected her freshly manicured nails. "Don't fret, I've already transferred your belongings. The guest room in my own home, the sanctuary my husband had helped create with his very hands. Yet, I held my tongue. Not yet. Because precisely 4 weeks prior, I had uncovered something about Serafina that reshaped everything. Something that made this brazen domestic coup seem almost trivial by comparison. My daughter-in-law wasn't merely redecorating. She was systematically plundering from us, cunningly, meticulously, and in sums that would utterly cripple our family enterprise if unearthed. And I had been guarding her secret. Just 4 weeks earlier, I had been working late in the office, attempting to reconcile some discrepancies, reconcile some troubling anomalies within our quarterly financial statements. Vance Holdings, a legacy Arthur and I had painstakingly built, was my anchor, my way of keeping his memory alive. The figures screamed at me, first subtle disparities, then a trickle of hundreds, a current of thousands. As I delved deeper into the ledger's cold, hard facts, a chilling realization solidified. Serafina, leveraging her position as Liam's wife and the company's ostensible events and budget liaison, had systematically exploited our trust. That night, hunched over my desk, illuminated only by the focused beam of my task lamp, cross-referencing complex invoices against meticulously scrubbed bank records, I uncovered a sophisticated web of deceit. Shell companies disguised as legitimate vendors, inflated project costs with the surplus diverted to untraceable offshore accounts, phantom consultant fees, even fictitious charitable donations funneled straight into her personal coffers. In just under 2 years, Serafina had siphoned close to $750,000 from Vance Holdings, a sum that, if exposed, could jeopardize the very future of the enterprise Arthur had cherished. My immediate, visceral urge was to wake Liam, to drag him to the office and lay bare the irrefutable proof. But a deeper, agonizing fear held me captive. Liam's devotion to Serafina was absolute, an almost childlike faith. She had, in her own twisted way, brought a lightness to his life, transforming my once reserved son into a man capable of genuine joy, someone who finally allowed himself moments of reprieve from the relentless demands of the business. And my grandchildren, Emma and Jake, idolized their mother. To unmask Serafina would not only annihilate her, but it would shatter Liam's carefully constructed happiness, inflict irreparable trauma on the children, and irrevocably cleave our family apart. The resultant scandal would undoubtedly tarnish the pristine reputation of Vance Holdings, jeopardizing decades of honest labor. Thus, I made a decision, born of love and, in hindsight, profound folly. I would handle this discreetly. I would confront Serafina privately, offer her an opportunity for contrition, perhaps structure a clandestine repayment arrangement. My naive hope was to contain the damage, to safeguard the family unit, to preserve a semblance of dignity for everyone involved. The following morning, I arranged to meet Serafina at The Daily Grind, a chic downtown cafe she favored, a place designed for hushed conversations, or so I thought. She swept in precisely 15 minutes late, offering a breezy apology about an unexpected personal commitment that had run over. Sliding into the minimalist booth opposite me, she asked, "What pressing matter warranted this early rendezvous, Eleanor?" I had rehearsed this opening countless times, meticulously crafting each phrase. "Serafina," I began, my voice deliberately calm, "I've been undertaking a thorough review of the company's financial records, and I've stumbled upon some deeply concerning discrepancies." Her perfectly sculpted face remained impassive, but I noticed a barely perceptible clenching of her jaw, a slight tightening around the handle of her artisan coffee mug. Discrepancies that point to substantial missing capital, payments directed to entities that simply do not exist, and a systemic pattern of financial malfeasance. Now she feigned genuine bewilderment, her brow furrowing with mock concern. "That's truly dreadful. Do you suspect it's an issue with the bank, or perhaps one of the newer accounting staff?" Her performance was impeccable, worthy of an award. Had I not witnessed the damning evidence with my own eyes, I might have been utterly convinced. "Serafina," I stated, leaning forward slightly, "I know it's you." For a fraction of a second, the elaborate mask crumbled. In the depths of her calculating gaze, I saw it. Not shame, but a flicker of acknowledgement, a cold assessment, and oddly, a fleeting shadow of relief. Then, the composure snapped back into place. "Prove it," she challenged, her voice dropping to a near whisper, yet laced with absolute conviction. In that chilling moment, I understood my monumental miscalculation. I had foolishly presumed that exposure would elicit guilt, perhaps even a desperate plea for mercy. Instead, she was not merely calling my bluff, she was holding all the cards. "You have your meticulous documentation, I'm sure," Serafina continued, her tone chillingly calm as she leaned across the table. Documentation you will never, ever present to Liam, because you cherish your son too deeply to obliterate his heart, because you know the fallout would decimate our marriage and scar your beloved grandchildren forever, because the cohesion of your family means infinitely more to you than money that, frankly, is already irretrievable. She was absolutely right, and we both knew it. Both of us. So, here is precisely how this is going to unfold, Serafina purred, leisurely stirring a cube of sugar into her latte with unnerving precision. You will let this entire unpleasantness vanish. You will refrain from meddling in financial matters that, with all due respect, Eleanor, are well beyond your current grasp. Her patronizing tone was a calculated insult, a deliberate sting, but she wasn't finished. In return, I shall, of course, exercise greater discretion moving forward. Consider it a valuable lesson for both parties. Eleanor should have recognized the danger, should have contacted Liam, or even the authorities. Instead, a deeply unsettling acquiescence had fallen over her. Serafina's smile momentarily vanished, now resurfaced, cloyingly sweet. Wonderful. I knew we'd reach an understanding. Isn't preserving familial bonds the most paramount concern? With a casual wave and a breezy, "See you Sunday for our usual dinner," Serafina departed the cafe. As the door chimed behind her, Eleanor was gripped by a chilling realization. She hadn't just made a bad deal, she had signed a pact with a predator who had merely promised to hunt more subtly. The distinction would prove to be devastating. The initial encroachments were almost imperceptible, easy to dismiss as Eleanor's own paranoia. Serafina started arriving conspicuously late to their traditional Sunday gatherings, always with an intricate apology about unforeseen traffic or an urgent children's obligation. Yet her eyes held a spark of satisfaction at Eleanor's barely concealed irritation. Her praise for Eleanor's culinary efforts became increasingly backhanded. "This classic pot roast is so robust, Eleanor. I tell Liam he really should explore more contemporary flavors, but you know how he clings to familiar tastes." Then came the domestic reorganizations. Each visit, Serafina would subtly reposition items in Eleanor's kitchen, ostensibly optimizing the layout. Eleanor's sturdy, familiar ceramic mugs, gifts from Arthur, began to vanish, replaced by fragile, gilded teacups that felt alien and ostentatious in her grasp. "We're elevating the aesthetic, Eleanor," Serafina declared airily, dismissing Eleanor's questions about her missing mugs. "These are so much more refined for when you're entertaining." The entertaining, Eleanor soon discovered, increasingly involved Serafina's own social circle and her parents, Karen and her husband, who started descending upon Eleanor's home for impromptu dinner parties Eleanor had never agreed to host. "You don't mind, do you, Eleanor? Our townhouse is simply too cramped, and you have such generous space here." Serafina would materialize at the doorstep with a car brimming with guests, anticipating Eleanor to effortlessly conjure a feast. "I've been raving about your legendary seafood paella," Eleanor minded profoundly. But Liam, oblivious, seemed genuinely delighted by Serafina's supposed efforts to integrate Eleanor into their vibrant social sphere. How could Eleanor articulate that each gathering felt less like inclusion and more like an annexation, slowly turning her into a mere prop in her own meticulously curated sanctuary? What twisted Eleanor's gut most was Serafina's artful charade of being the devoted daughter-in-law, tirelessly showering attention on poor, solitary Eleanor. During these enforced soirees, Serafina would loudly proclaim, "Eleanor crafted this magnificent raspberry tart all by herself. Isn't she utterly remarkable?" delivered in a saccharine tone that transformed Eleanor into an aged relative being humored, rather than the rightful matriarch and host. However, it was Emma's 10th birthday celebration that starkly revealed the full extent of Serafina's audacious power grab. Eleanor and Emma had meticulously planned a fantastical, enchanted forest theme for weeks. Eleanor had dedicated countless hours to handcrafting intricate fairy decorations and baking a majestic, multi-tiered unicorn cake. The morning of the party, Serafina arrived, her mother Karen in tow, with a vehicle overflowing with garish, store-bought decor. "Sudden change of direction," Serafina announced, entirely bypassing a greeting. We're going with a far more contemporary, sparkling rose gold theme. Extremely photogenic for Instagram, you understand. They then commenced tearing down Eleanor's painstakingly made decorations, replacing them with generic balloons and synthetic banners that screamed, "Discount Superstore." When Eleanor attempted to interject, Serafina's voice turned brittle. "Eleanor, I genuinely appreciate your enthusiasm, but Emma is my daughter. I believe I have a superior understanding of her current preferences." Emma stood frozen in the doorway, her small face visibly crestfallen. "But Grandma and I spent ages making the little sprites," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. "Oh, darling," Serafina cooed, her tone instantly sickeningly sweet. "Grandma's intentions are always pure, but sometimes adults have differing visions for what truly shines. Don't worry, this will be so much grander." The dismissal was absolute. Emma's profound disappointment, Eleanor's weeks of dedicated labor, her very role in her granddaughter's celebration, all summarily swept away with a callous disregard that felt like an open wound. The true humiliation solidified when the first guests arrived for the celebration. "Serafina, darling, this transformation is simply divine," gushed one mother, her eyes wide with admiration. "Your flair for event planning is unmatched." Serafina beamed, a vision of false modesty. "Oh, thank you, darling. I barely slept a wink pulling it all together. I only want the best for our precious Emma." From my secluded vantage point in the kitchen, I observed her performance, a flawlessly orchestrated charade. She glided through the room, accepting accolades for the stunning party she had usurped, gracefully distributing slices of the cake I had spent hours perfecting. The parents praised her organizational prowess, her impeccable taste, her boundless dedication to her daughter. Not one casual remark, not a single acknowledgement that this vibrant scene unfolded within my home, my meticulously appointed kitchen, featuring my culinary efforts. Later that evening, long after the last car had departed and a weary silence settled, I found myself mechanically scrubbing frosting from plates, a solitary architect sifting through the wreckage of a dream. Liam discovered me amidst the remnants of a party I had been systematically erased from. "Remarkable bash, Mom. Serafina truly outdid herself, didn't she?" I gazed at my son, the man I had nurtured, striving to instill values of honesty and fairness, and a profound, agonizing realization washed over me. He saw nothing amiss. In his perception, his wife had elegantly orchestrated a magnificent event in my house, and I had merely been a fortunate auxiliary. "Liam," I ventured, my voice carefully modulated, "don't you believe Serafina should have discussed the changes to the decorations with me first?" He frowned, genuinely perplexed. "Why? It was Emma's day. Serafina knows what Emma likes." But Emma and I had painstakingly planned an entirely different theme. "Mom, honestly, I think you're overthinking this." Liam's tone adopted that subtle yet undeniably condescending inflection one reserves for an elderly relative whose grasp on contemporary nuances might be slipping. "Serafina was merely aiming for perfection. You should genuinely be grateful she was willing to host the party here at all." Grateful. I was expected to feel gratitude that my daughter-in-law had allowed me to host my own granddaughter's birthday party in my own residence. That night, stretched rigidly in my bed, my gaze fixed on the ceiling, Serafina's chilling stratagem began to crystallize. It wasn't simply a matter of siphoning funds from Vance Holdings. She was meticulously, methodically, stealing my very position within the family structure. One calculated slight, one subtle erasure, one small humiliation at a time, and she executed it with such cunning that even my own son remained utterly blind to the unfolding heist. Serafina's parents relocated on a Tuesday. I returned from a routine grocery run to find a formidable moving truck monopolizing my driveway, while unfamiliar faces hefted extraneous furniture into the sanctuary of my home. Serafina greeted me at the threshold, her smile that dangerously bright beacon I had come to dread. "Surprise. I did tell you they were arriving, didn't I? I'm certain I mentioned it just last week." She had mentioned nothing, a truth we both acknowledged in the silent space between us. Yet Karen and Bob were already making themselves at home in what had been my master bedroom, openly critiquing the view from my windows and debating optimal placements for their television. "It's entirely temporary," Serafina chirped. though her parents were unpacking with the focused intensity of permanent residents, just until they regained their footing. Bob, I knew, was 62 and hadn't held a steady job in 5 years. Karen maintained a disability claim for a phantom back injury, one that conveniently never impeded her vigorous shopping excursions or meticulous redecorating projects, but rendered gainful employment unequivocally impossible. Together they subsisted on government welfare and whatever sums Serafina could channel their way. Money, I now understood, flowed directly from our Vance Holdings accounts. Naturally, they'll contribute to household expenses, Serafina added, though the precise timing or quantity remained tellingly vague. Within a single week, my once tranquil haven had devolved into a cacophonous boarding house. Karen, with an astonishing proprietorial air, rearranged my kitchen to align with her peculiar cooking rituals. Bob, with equal audacity, commandeered my living room television, inundating the house with the relentless din of sports commentaries and belligerent political punditry. They consumed my provisions, depleted my utilities, and treated me, the homeowner, as an unwelcome interloper. But the absolute breaking point was reached during Emma's school play. Emma, my sweet granddaughter, was slated to perform in her 5th-grade production of Little Red Riding Hood, and she had dedicated weeks to perfecting her lines. I had promised her I would be there, and Emma, with characteristic foresight, had reserved a front-row seat for me, nestled between Liam and Serafina. Just 20 minutes before the curtain rose, Serafina appeared at my bedroom door. "I am truly so terribly sorry, Eleanor, but there's been a slight alteration to our plans." Serafina's mother, Karen, a formidable presence in a new silk dress, stood beaming behind her, an ostentatious bouquet of roses clutched like a trophy. "My mother simply insisted on witnessing Emma's debut," Serafina chirped, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "And of course, being Emma's grandmother, she absolutely must have a prime seat in the front row. You understand, Eleanor?" The unspoken subtext hung heavy. Karen, the new preferred matriarch; Eleanor, an unfortunate squatter. Emma saved a seat for me," I managed, my voice barely a whisper. Serafina waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, darling, Emma is remarkably adaptable. She'll grasp that sometimes adult arrangements simply take precedence. Besides, there will be countless other showcases for your viewership." From the desolate vantage point of my bedroom window, I watched them pull away in Liam's car, the image of my son's unsuspecting face beside Serafina, a fresh dagger to my heart. I pictured Emma, her eyes scanning the expectant faces in the audience, searching for mine, and the hollow ache of my absence. But this time, a quiet, furious resolve ignited within me. I wasn't merely a discarded ornament. I drove my own car to the school, purchased a single anonymous ticket in the furthest general admission row, and settled into the shadowed anonymity of the auditorium's rear. From that distant perch, I watched my darling granddaughter, radiant and poised, embody Little Red Riding Hood, her voice ringing out with an unexpected power that swelled my heart with defiant pride. Afterwards, a blur of red fabric pushed through the throng of departing parents, and Emma launched herself into my arms, still adorned in her iconic hooded cape. "Grandma Eleanor, you did come!" she exclaimed, her voice vibrating with relief and joy. "Did you see when I tricked the wolf? You were absolutely breathtaking, my love, the most incredible Little Red Riding Hood I've ever witnessed," I whispered, holding her tight. "But why were you all the way at the back? I had a special seat saved just for you, right at the front." Before I could formulate an explanation, Serafina swept over, Karen hovering expectantly in her wake. "There you are, Emma, my little star. Come, darling, let's get some wonderful photos with your grandmother Karen. She made such a journey just for you." Serafina's voice was honeyed but held an underlying edge. Emma's bright smile flickered, her gaze darting between me and her other grandmother. "But Grandma Eleanor is here, too. Can she be in the photos with us?" "Of course, darling," Serafina purred, her smile a brittle, insincere mask. "Perhaps Grandma Eleanor would be so kind as to capture these cherished memories for us? Her eye for detail is simply impeccable." And in that instant, I transitioned from a cherished family member to a silent chronicler, tasked with freezing moments I was forbidden from truly experiencing, preserving memories I was actively prevented from creating. That night, cocooned in the sterile confines of the guest room, now my de facto prison within my own home, a chilling yet liberating resolve settled deep within my bones. I was finished protecting Serafina, finished with my misguided attempts at discretion. The woman who had systematically pilfered from Vance Holdings, brazenly annexed my sanctuary, and insidiously chiseled away at my very identity within my family, deserved every ounce of retribution fate held in store. The singular, gnawing dilemma was how to unleash that reckoning, how to unveil her true predatory essence without irrevocably scarring Liam and my beloved grandchildren. But before I could act, I needed a complete inventory of her larceny. If she possessed the audacity to steal my very place in the family hierarchy, I had a terrifying premonition that the financial exploitation was merely charting a fresh, more aggressive trajectory. The following morning, feigning a sudden illness, I navigated my car towards the Vance Holdings office during Liam's usual lunch break, confident Serafina would be engaged with her new, therapeutic domestic responsibilities. It was time for a forensic deep dive into our financial archives. What I unearthed made my initial discovery of Serafina's embezzlement seem like child's play. My daughter-in-law had been operating on an entirely different scale. That afternoon, isolated in the hushed expanse of the executive office, surrounded by a blizzard of spreadsheets and bank statements, I painstakingly unraveled a labyrinthine tapestry of financial malfeasance that stole the breath from my lungs. The specific instance of a $200,000 diversion I had stumbled upon weeks ago was, indeed, merely the tip of a colossal iceberg. She had conjured an elaborate, entirely fictitious venture, the Evergreen Manor renovation, a luxury residential project that existed solely as an elaborate paper trail, yet commanded a relentless stream of very real invoices and payments. For a staggering 8 months, Vance Holdings had been meticulously funding every conceivable aspect: materials, skilled labor, permits, for a sprawling estate that was nothing more than an ethereal illusion. Checks, meticulously processed, had flowed into a convoluted network of shell companies, each meticulously engineered to lead back to a private account under Serafina's direct control. The sheer audacity and intricate sophistication of her scheme were almost a perverse work of art. She had flawlessly replicated Liam's signature on a multitude of contracts, fabricated layers of documentation designed to withstand any cursory audit, and even compiled counterfeit progress reports artfully embellished with photographs pilfered from unrelated construction sites across the internet. The aggregate sum siphoned from this singular phantom project was frankly apocalyptic, an additional $437,000. But as my trembling hands retrieved the incriminating printouts from the machine, it wasn't solely the colossal figures that rattled me to my core. It was the terrifying chronology. Serafina's most flagrant and audacious appropriations had all transpired within the past 3 months. The audacity of these recent appropriations, all within the past 3 months, chillingly coincided with Serafina's escalating campaign to incrementally displace me from my own sanctuary. It wasn't mere recklessness, it was a calculated acceleration. She wasn't simply becoming bolder, she was amassing capital with a fierce urgency, clearly orchestrating something monumental that demanded both a vast sum of money and my complete disengagement from all family financial oversight. I was meticulously scrutinizing a particularly damning dossier of fabricated invoices, the fluorescent hum of the office the only sound, when the distinct echo of footsteps resonated down the hallway. My breath hitched. The entire floor should have been deserted, but someone was approaching the accounting suite with an unnervingly deliberate pace. In a frantic surge of adrenaline, I swept the incriminating documents into a thin manila folder, expertly tucking it beneath a stack of innocuous, quarterly reports just as Serafina appeared, framed in the doorway. "Eleanor, what a delightful surprise," she purred, her voice airy, yet her gaze, devoid of genuine warmth, meticulously assessed my presence. "Liam mentioned you were under the weather today." I forced a weak smile. "Just a lingering headache. I thought a change of scenery might alleviate it." My voice, though carefully modulated, felt tight. My pulse hammered a furious rhythm against my ribs. "And you, Serafina, what necessitates your presence here?" Her perfectly arched eyebrow rose. "Oh, a few forgotten files from this morning. You know how my mind wanders." She glided further into the room, movements radiating an unquestionable sense of ownership, her eyes casually yet clinically sweeping my desktop, cataloging every item. "Feeling better, I trust?" She settled onto the corner of Liam's sprawling desk, a calculated act that subtly asserted her dominion over this executive space. "Much, thank you," I replied, already moving towards the door, the slender folder containing the detailed evidence of her financial misdeeds now nestled discreetly among other legitimate papers beneath my arm. I should return home and truly rest. "An excellent plan," Serafina chirped. "Karen's preparing her legendary pot roast tonight. She's simply thrilled to be cooking for the family." The seemingly innocuous statement, layered with the insidious subtext of Karen orchestrating a meal in my kitchen with my provisions, was a calculated jab, another reminder of the domestic annexation. I merely offered a tight, polite smile and continued my exit. "Oh, Eleanor," Serafina's voice, now sharper, halted me at the threshold. "What exactly were you immersed in? Perhaps I can assist with its completion tomorrow?" "Just tidying up some overdue vendor payments. Nothing pressing," I responded, my back to her. "Which vendors, precisely?" Her voice held an unsettling precision. "I've largely taken over that particular administrative burden." The query was entirely too specific, too overtly inquisitive. Serafina's suspicion was palpable. "A variety," I replied, maintaining my composure. "I'll certainly leave you a detailed note if any follow-up is required." It wasn't until I reached the privacy of my car, fumbling with my keys, that the tremors began to course through my hands. Serafina had undeniably sensed my clandestine investigation, and though I had successfully retrieved the damning evidence without overt discovery, she knew, with an instinctual certainty, that the precarious dynamic between us had irrevocably shifted. That evening, as our family gathered around the dining table, I observed Serafina's flawless portrayal of the devoted daughter-in-law with a chilling new perspective. She effusively praised Karen's pot roast, patiently guided Jake through his math homework, and engaged Liam with the solicitous attention of an adoring spouse. Yet every so often, her eyes would dart towards me, and in their depths, I caught a glimpse of something utterly cold and ruthlessly analytical. She was evaluating, meticulously strategizing, weighing the precise extent of the threat I now represented. Later, after a dinner where Karen, despite her fervent promises, had miraculously managed to avoid a single chore, I found myself alone at the sink, mechanically scrubbing plates. Serafina materialized beside me, a pristine dish towel clutched in her hand. "Allow me to assist," she offered, gently relieving me of a plate. "You appear quite fatigued." A heavy silence descended, broken only by the incessant drone of Bob's television from the living room and the faint echoes of the children's laughter. "You know, Eleanor," Serafina began, her voice suddenly soft, "I've been reflecting on our conversation from a few weeks past regarding the corporate finances." My hands, mid-wash, froze on the delicate rim of a crystal glass. I concede I might have been overly defensive. Monetary affairs can be extraordinarily taxing, particularly for individuals of a certain vintage. Perhaps it's time you seriously considered relinquishing your grip on the financial oversight entirely. Devote yourself to simply cherishing your grandchildren while you are still able. My jaw tightened. "I am perfectly capable of managing the accounts, Serafina." "Of course you are," she conceded, her tone dripping with false reassurance. "However, Liam has voiced some concerns lately, mentioning your recent struggles, the confusion surrounding Emma's party decorations, and apparently a complete lapse in memory regarding our discussions about Karen and Bob relocating here." She was meticulously, ruthlessly constructing a narrative of my mental decline, twisting every legitimate objection into evidence of my diminishing faculties. "I didn't forget anything, Serafina," I retorted, my voice low and fierce. "You never once informed me of their arrival or the changes to Emma's party or any of it. You simply imposed your will." "It's entirely understandable, Ava," Victoria interjected, her voice imbued with a sympathetic lilt, yet precisely calibrated, so Daniel, fetching a drink from the refrigerator, couldn't miss a single word. A little forgetfulness is a natural part of aging, nothing to be ashamed of. Daniel paused, his brow furrowed with genuine concern as he looked from one of us to the other. "Mom, if you're finding it hard to keep track of things—" "I'm not having any trouble," I asserted, my voice firm. "You see?" Victoria gently touched Daniel's arm, her gaze conveying a manufactured pity. "She gets so defensive when we try to offer help. I read an article just recently that described it as entirely typical." A cold wave of dread washed over me. Victoria was meticulously laying a foundation, weaving an insidious web of doubt around my mental acuity, establishing a pattern of behavior that could be wielded against me with devastating effect. If she could persuade Daniel that I was descending into senility, then any future revelation of her theft would be summarily dismissed as the incoherent ramblings of an elderly woman losing her grip on reality. That night, ensconced in the sterile confines of my bedroom, the door firmly locked, I spread Victoria's illicit financial documents across my bed. One by one, I began photographing each page with my phone, the click of the camera a stark counterpoint to the thrumming anxiety in my chest. If she was poised to discredit me, I needed irrefutable evidence, something that couldn't be rationalized away or explained as mere confusion. But as I worked, a terrifying realization solidified. Victoria wasn't merely plotting to pilfer more funds. She was planning to seize everything. Victoria's true, monstrous design became apparent purely by chance 3 days after our unsettling kitchen confrontation. I was out running errands when I remembered leaving my reading glasses at the office. Driving back, I let myself into the deserted building on a quiet Saturday afternoon with my key. That was when I heard Victoria's voice, hushed and urgent, emanating from Daniel's office as she spoke on the phone. My instinct should have been to announce my presence, to call out a greeting and retrieve my glasses like any normal person. Instead, something in the cold, calculated timbre of her voice made me freeze just beyond the office door, every fiber of my being rigid with apprehension. Securing power of attorney should be a mere formality, given her rapidly deteriorating state of mind, Victoria was saying, her tone chillingly confident. Daniel has already observed the increasing instances of confusion, and with Dr. Fielding's understanding, my blood turned to ice. No, the primary focus remains the corporate accounts. Once I've established legal control over her assets, a swift, untraceable liquidation can commence. A brief pause, then, the residence presents a slightly trickier obstacle, but once she's legally declared incapacitated, a forced sale for her benefit becomes entirely defensible. My own home, the sanctuary Robert painstakingly crafted. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart hammering so violently I feared its frantic rhythm would betray my presence. It's all entirely legitimate, I assure you. This is a common occurrence, particularly when families must make hard choices to protect their vulnerable elders. By the winter holidays, every loose end will be tied, Victoria continued, her voice imbued with a sickening satisfaction. Karen and Bob will have their own place, Daniel will command Henderson Construction unchallenged, and Ava will be comfortably situated in specialized care, exactly where she needs to be, specialized care. My breath hitched in my throat. Victoria intended to brand me mentally unfit, to confine me to an institution, while she systematically dismantled my legacy and liquidated my home. The delicious irony is that Daniel genuinely believes this is his own initiative, fueled by sincere concern for his mother's well-being. Victoria's laugh, a soft, venomous sound, echoed through the quiet office. He remains utterly oblivious that every instance of confusion has been meticulously staged. My mind reeled, replaying the missing mugs, the invasively rearranged kitchen, the relentless gaslighting over fabricated conversations. Each subtle manipulation, a calculated chisel eroding my confidence, meticulously constructing a damning narrative of my mental decline. I need another 6 to 8 weeks, perhaps, to firmly cement the pattern. Then, we can have that compassionate discussion with her doctor about the immense strain of handling corporate finances at her advanced age. A beat of silence. Dr. Fielding, I'm told, is remarkably empathetic to family concerns regarding their elderly patients. Dr. Fielding, my long-standing personal physician, the keeper of my entire medical history for 3 decades, was seemingly a pawn in this elaborate scheme. As for the money trail, by the time anyone even considers scrutinizing it, I'll be beyond reach. Serafina's voice, laced with chilling certainty, asserted her right to manage all financial transactions. "It's hardly pilfering when every transfer is meticulously accounted for on paper," she declared, an unsettling confidence radiating from her. I heard Serafina rustling within Liam's office, papers being stacked, the sound of her imminent departure. A cold dread enveloped me. I was cornered in the corridor, visibility absolute, escape impossible without being discovered. I need to depart, I mentally urged myself. Liam will be expecting me, and my tardiness will inevitably spark questions. Serafina's voice, now closer to the threshold, punctuated my internal monologue. "Ensure all your preparations are flawless. This opportunity is our gateway to a life of unparalleled ease." I barely managed to slip into the narrow utility closet an instant before Serafina stepped out of Liam's office. Peering through the slim gap in the door, I watched her secure the lock, then stroll towards the building's exit, a light, carefree hum escaping her lips, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within me. Only after her footsteps vanished and the distinctive click of the main door resonated did I dare to move, remaining cloistered in the darkness, struggling to assimilate the horrifying revelations. Serafina wasn't merely pilfering funds from Vance Holdings. She was meticulously engineering the utter demolition of my existence, leveraging Liam's unsuspecting complicity and my trusted physician's calculated involvement. Her chilling vision meant that by the onset of winter, I would be confined to an institution, dispossessed of my entire estate, my freedom, and my beloved family. Serafina would reign supreme over every aspect. The thriving enterprise Arthur and I had painstakingly forged, the cherished home we had nurtured, even my precious connection with my grandchildren. The most insidious element was the facade. Everyone would perceive this as a tragic yet unavoidable choice, enacted by devoted relatives solely concerned with the welfare of a poor, declining Eleanor. When I finally re-emerged from that clandestine refuge, I was no longer the woman who had sought its temporary anonymity. For months, I had shielded Serafina, prioritizing the fragile illusion of familial peace. I had silently suffered countless indignities, preferring that pain to shattering Liam's world by exposing her transgressions. But Serafina had committed a profound tactical error. She had arrogantly presumed my passive acquiescence, my quiet acceptance of her fabricated narrative, my graceful retreat into whatever gilded cage she had meticulously prepared. She was on the precipice of discovering the terrifying depth of her misjudgment. For if Serafina intended to use my life as her personal chessboard, I was more than ready to demonstrate the perilous consequences of underestimating a woman who, having lost everything, found an unyielding primal strength. The true contest had just begun. The following Sunday morning found me immersed in the hushed confines of the public library, meticulously navigating online databases, devouring every detail on financial fraud and elder exploitation statutes. It was astonishing, the breadth of knowledge one could acquire when propelled by such urgent, raw motivation. Detective Evelyn Shaw from the Economic Crimes Division was remarkably accessible that Monday. I had steeled myself for layers of bureaucratic obfuscation, but instead I encountered a perceptive professional who afforded my account unwavering attention. "Mrs. Vance, your narrative paints a chillingly clear picture of textbook financial manipulation," Detective Shaw affirmed. "Do you possess corroborating evidence?" "Extensive documentation," I confirmed, including bank statements, meticulously forged agreements, fabricated invoices, the entire damning collection. "I need to examine these without delay. Could you possibly meet me this afternoon?" I agreed, and soon found myself seated opposite Detective Shaw, observing her methodical scrutiny of the comprehensive dossier I had painstakingly assembled. Her demeanor grew progressively somber as she absorbed Serafina's intricate machinations. "This is exceptionally refined," she conceded, a note of genuine surprise in her voice. "Your daughter-in-law exhibits a formidable aptitude for this particular brand of deception. the phantom company, the skillfully replicated signatures, the entirely fictitious development project. She paused, her gaze meeting mine. She's operated in this manner previously, hasn't she? Before? I echoed. I would wager my reputation on it. No novice embarks on fraud of this elaborate scale. Detective Shaw settled back, a contemplative air about her. Our next step is verification, substantiating these documents, interviewing relevant individuals, constructing an unassailable case. This process demands patience. How much time are we looking at? I pressed. A minimum of 6 weeks, she responded. Potentially longer, depending on the meticulousness of her cover-up. 6 weeks. Serafina's sinister blueprint projected my legal incapacitation within a mere month. Detective, I urged, my voice tight with urgency. She intends to have me officially declared unfit. My own physician is complicit, and she's systematically convinced my son that my memory is failing. Detective Shaw's features hardened, her jaw visibly tightening. That fundamentally alters the dynamic. Cases involving elder exploitation are prioritized. Priority, particularly when such sophisticated psychological manipulation is at play. Detective Shaw's gaze sharpened. I'm making immediate contact with my superiors. By the ensuing Wednesday, Detective Shaw had meticulously assembled a formidable task force, a lead investigator from the Financial Crimes Division, a seasoned specialist in elder abuse, and a dedicated prosecutor from the District Attorney's Office, known for her relentless pursuit of family fraud cases. Yet the most pivotal ally, a true beacon of conscience, emerged from an entirely unexpected quarter, my own physician. Dr. Fielding, a man whose professional integrity I had trusted for decades, summoned me to his office that Thursday. His usually composed demeanor was shattered, replaced by a profound blend of shame and righteous indignation. Eleanor, I am utterly mortified and profoundly sorry. Serafina visited me 6 weeks ago, presenting a meticulously crafted narrative of acute concern for your well-being. She spoke of disconcerting lapses in memory, moments of profound confusion, and an alarming inability to manage Vance Holdings' intricate finances. I see now with horrifying clarity that every word was a calculated fabrication. She was exquisitely persuasive, her feigned distress utterly convincing, and her examples chillingly specific. Dr. Fielding shook his head slowly, a heavy sigh escaping him. She expertly exploited my inherent trust in family accounts, my own subconscious biases regarding patients of advanced age. What precisely did she request? I inquired, my voice taut. She urged me to conduct a comprehensive cognitive assessment, suggesting a potential recommendation for specialized mental health evaluation. She implied with subtle cruelty that transferring your financial responsibilities to Liam and her would be an act of compassion, an easing of your burden. The depth of her manipulative genius was truly breathtaking. She even presented me with research papers on elder financial abuse. Dr. Fielding continued, his voice laced with disgust, feigning distress that someone might be preying on your supposed cognitive decline. The sheer sickening irony of it still turns my stomach. Will you stand with us? I asked, a sliver of hope emerging. Without question, Eleanor. I've already contacted Detective Shaw, providing a full sworn statement detailing Serafina's calculated attempts to subvert medical ethics. Her actions transcend mere fraud. They are a reprehensible betrayal of the sacred trust that binds families and their healthcare providers. Mrs. Vance, Detective Shaw's voice resonated through the phone that Friday morning, carrying the precise blend of authority and satisfaction I had secretly yearned for. We are prepared to execute the warrant. Can you ensure your availability Monday morning around 10 o'clock? For what purpose? I inquired, though my heart already knew the answer. To witness your daughter-in-law's official apprehension. The unvarnished triumph in her tone might have been considered unprofessional by some, but to me, it was nothing less than perfectly pitched. But before the final act of justice unfolded, I had one more agonizing yet essential piece to position on this grim chessboard. That very afternoon, I extended an invitation to Liam for coffee. Just us, darling, I emphasized, away from Serafina's ever-present shadow and the incessant demands of her parents. Mom, your voice sounds strained. Liam began, his brow furrowing with a genuine concern that twisted a fresh knife in my gut. "Is everything all right?" His sincere worry made the impending disclosure all the more excruciating, but he deserved the unvarnished truth from me, not from the cold, impersonal voice of law enforcement. "Liam," I began, my voice a carefully controlled tremor, "I need to confide in you about Serafina. This information, it's going to be incredibly difficult to process." Predictably, his face immediately hardened, the familiar defensive wall rising whenever his wife was remotely criticized. "Mom, if this is about the incessant modernizations to the house or Karen and Bob's seemingly permanent residency, I assure you—" "Liam," I cut him off, my voice gaining a desperate urgency. "Serafina has been systematically embezzling a substantial fortune from Vance Holdings, not just for months, but for an extended period." Liam stared at me as if I had suddenly begun speaking in a cryptic, ancient dialect. "That's utterly preposterous. Serafina doesn't even possess the requisite—" He abruptly halted, a chilling realization dawning in his eyes. "She manages the administrative logistics, but she would never. She couldn't." "I possess irrefutable proof, Liam. Comprehensive bank statements, skillfully forged contractual agreements, meticulous documentation detailing the diversion of nearly $500,000. The very color drained from his face, leaving a sickly pallor. "That cannot be true." From my handbag, I retrieved a slim folder containing pristine copies of the most damning evidence. I desperately wish it weren't. For what felt like an eternity, 20 agonizing minutes, Liam meticulously pored over the documents. I watched, a silent witness, as the carefully constructed edifice of his life crumbled before his eyes. The woman he adored, the mother of his children, had systematically dismantled the very legacy his father, Arthur, had poured his life into building. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" His voice was a raw, barely audible whisper. "Because I believed I could resolve it discreetly. I thought I could shield our family from ruin." "Shield the family?" Liam's suppressed anguish finally erupted into a searing anger. "She's been bleeding us dry for over a year." "There's more, Liam," I confessed, the words tasting like ash. "Serafina has been meticulously plotting to have me officially declared mentally incapacitated, all to seize complete legal control of all my assets." I recounted the chilling specifics of her phone conversation. I recounted the chilling details of Serafina's sinister plot to manipulate Dr. Fielding and her systematic campaign to erode my credibility, portraying me as someone losing her grasp on reality. By the time I concluded, Liam's knuckles were bone white from gripping the table's edge. "The authorities are planning her arrest for Monday morning," I revealed softly. "I believed you deserved to know." Liam finally met my gaze, his eyes brimming with a raw mixture of anguish and profound betrayal. "Emma and Jake?" he whispered, his voice thick with dread. "What will become of them?" "They'll remain with you, Liam," I affirmed. "You are their father, after all." He buried his face in his hands. "How do I possibly explain this to them? How can I tell my children their mother is a criminal?" I reached across the polished surface and gently clasped his hand. "We will navigate this together, as a family," I promised. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Liam returned the pressure, a fragile spark of connection. Serafina, however, possessed an uncanny instinct for shifts in the emotional landscape. Throughout the weekend, her eyes, sharp and calculating, followed my every move, clearly attempting to decipher the subtle alteration in my demeanor. I had ceased all resistance to Karen and Bob's escalating intrusions, no longer voiced objections when she indiscriminately reorganized my possessions, and resolutely refused to rise to her sly provocations. "You appear remarkably composed lately," Serafina remarked on Sunday evening, as we cleared away the dinner plates. "Have you perhaps found something to alleviate your anxiety?" "I'm simply striving for a more fluid approach," I responded placidly. "You were entirely correct about the wisdom of choosing one's battles more judiciously." Serafina's smile was a glinting blade of satisfaction. She believed, with profound certainty, that she had finally worn me down into capitulation. "I am genuinely delighted to hear that. It is, after all, essential for individuals of a certain age to embrace assistance gracefully, rather than resisting every necessary adjustment. If only she truly grasped the exquisite grace with which I intended to embrace the assistance of law enforcement. Monday morning dawned, crisp and impossibly clear. I meticulously donned my finest navy suit. The one Arthur had always maintained lent me an air of formidable authority in the boardroom. Today felt, without question, like the most pivotal confrontation of my entire life. Detective Shaw had provided precise directives. I was to maintain my usual demeanor, adhere to my customary morning rituals, and be prepared to grant the arrest team seamless access to the Vance Holdings offices upon their arrival. I sat at my kitchen table, feigning absorption in the morning newspaper, my ears acutely attuned to the subtle rumble of cars on the driveway, when Serafina made her entrance, swathed in a luxurious silk robe. "You're an early bird today," she observed, gliding towards the coffee maker with an almost predatory grace. "Couldn't sleep. Decided an early start at the office might be productive." Serafina poured herself a mug of coffee and leaned casually against the granite counter, her gaze meticulously dissecting my expression. "You know, Eleanor," she began, "I've been reflecting on our discussion from last week concerning your eventual retreat from the financial responsibilities. Oh," she continued, as if recalling an afterthought, "Liam agrees that it might indeed be beneficial for everyone. Less pressure for you, more precious time to devote to the grandchildren." Serafina's voice was cloyingly sweet, a deceptive veil over her intensely calculating eyes. "We could even initiate the transition this very week." The transition meant, of course, her complete unfettered command of all the business accounts. "That's exceptionally thoughtful, dear," I replied, my tone neutral. Serafina blinked, her composure momentarily ruffled by my unexpected acquiescence. She had braced herself for a skirmish, not such placid cooperation. "So you're genuinely receptive to the notion?" "At my stage in life, I truly should be relishing retirement rather than fretting over intricate quarterly reports," I stated, folding the newspaper with an exaggerated, almost theatrical precision. "When did you envision commencing?" "Well, if you're absolutely certain, we could arrange a meeting with the accountant as early as tomorrow to start the transfer of signatory authority." Tomorrow. Serafina was clearly accelerating her timeline, moving with a speed Detective Shaw had not quite foreseen. "That sounds perfectly acceptable," I replied, rising and reaching for my handbag. "I should make my way to the office directly." "Actually, Eleanor, why don't you simply take the day for yourself? I am perfectly capable of handling whatever tasks require attention." Serafina, eagerly stepping into command of the office on the very morning she anticipated securing dominion over our accounts. How utterly convenient. "If you truly insist," I responded agreeably, "I'll simply attend to a few errands then." I was meticulously backing out of the driveway when, in my rearview mirror, I observed the subtle, yet unmistakable forms of unmarked police vehicles turning onto my quiet street. Exquisite timing. I proceeded to the nearest grocery store, where I spent a leisurely 45 minutes acquiring an array of superfluous items, meticulously allowing Detective Shaw and her team ample time to complete their preparations. Eleanor, still lingering in the brightly lit aisles of the supermarket, feigning an interest in exotic fruits, felt her phone vibrate. "Mrs. Vance, this is Detective Shaw," came the calm, professional voice. "Serafina Vance is in custody." A quiet sigh of relief escaped Eleanor's lips. The phrase echoed in her mind, a symphony of justice, a declaration of the end to months of insidious torment. Her reaction, Detective Shaw continued, a hint of dry amusement in her tone. "Precisely as anticipated, demanding legal representation, proclaiming a grave misunderstanding, and naturally attributing it all to your alleged mental confusion." "Oh, and her parents? Karen and Bob? They were also taken in. It appears the Mitchells, Vance's parents, have a rather extensive criminal history, with outstanding warrants in multiple states for identical fraud schemes. It seems Serafina's apprenticeship in deception began early." A dark chuckle bubbled within Eleanor, a twisted satisfaction. They weren't merely recipients of Serafina's ill-gotten gains. They were the master craftsmen, training their offspring in the family's illicit trade. Arraignment is scheduled for this afternoon, Shaw stated. Given the sheer scale of the financial exploitation and the elder abuse component, bail is exceedingly unlikely. A beat of silence. Mrs. Vance, there's something else you need to know. During the search, we discovered documentation confirming she intended to file those guardianship papers this very week. A cold shiver traced Eleanor's spine. This week. Days. Had she lingered even a moment longer, Serafina's final, cruel masterpiece would have been complete. Eleanor, legally incapacitated, stripped of her autonomy. Thank you, Detective, Eleanor managed, her voice thick with emotion. For everything. Just doing our job, Mrs. Vance, Shaw replied, a genuine warmth now present. Though I must admit it's particularly gratifying when justice prevails. Driving back, Eleanor found her home once more transformed, yet this time, the alteration brought a profound sense of peace. The official police vehicles were gone, replaced by Liam's familiar truck, parked neatly in the driveway. Through the living room windows, she could discern his silhouette, moving with a quiet purpose, undoubtedly attempting to mend the fractured order after the morning's upheaval. Stepping through the front door, Eleanor found her son, Liam, hunched at the kitchen table, his head buried in his hands. Liam, she whispered. He lifted his head, his eyes bloodshot and swollen. I called in sick, he muttered, his voice raspy with despair. Couldn't face Vance Holdings today. The children are at school. I don't know what to tell them. Eleanor settled into the chair beside him, offering a silent, comforting presence. She's been lying to me for years, hasn't she? Liam asked, his voice barely audible. Not just about the finances, about everything. Eleanor met his gaze, her heart aching. I believe so. Yes. How could I have been so blind? His agony was palpable, tearing at Eleanor's soul. How did I let her poison me against my own mother? She is exceptionally adept at manipulation, Liam, Eleanor murmured, laying a gentle hand on his arm. She fooled many, many people. But I should have known better. I should have shielded you instead of... He faltered, the words catching in his throat. Instead of what, darling? Eleanor prompted softly. Instead of believing you were just a difficult, resentful old woman who couldn't adapt to change, he confessed, his shame a heavy cloak around him. She convinced me that your concerns were rooted in paranoia, in a failing memory, that you were simply resistant to anything that altered your routines. You were striving to be a devoted husband, Liam, Eleanor countered gently, to support your wife. That is not a terrible thing. I was a terrible son, he insisted, his voice cracking. They sat in weighted silence, absorbing the seismic shock of Serafina's duplicity and the devastation it had wrought upon their family. What about Emma and Jake? Liam finally questioned, his gaze seeking hers, raw and vulnerable. That, my love, depends entirely on you, Eleanor replied, her voice soft. I want to raise them myself. Here. With you, Mom. If you'll have us. The earnest plea, so simple yet so profound, brought a fresh sting to Eleanor's eyes. Her home, which had been systematically converted into a gilded cage under Serafina's tyrannical reign, was now poised to reclaim its true essence. A sanctuary, a haven, a home. Of course I'll have you, Liam, she choked out, tears finally spilling. This is your home, too. It always has been. Liam managed a fragile, watery smile. I think we have a lot to discuss, Liam observed, breaking the quiet. Indeed, Eleanor agreed, her voice imbued with a newfound lightness. We have all the time in the world. The house exhaled around them, lighter, brighter, as if a suffocating weight had been lifted with Serafina's departure. That Tuesday, Liam and Eleanor painstakingly purged her parents' lingering presence from the master bedroom. Karen and Bob's garish belongings were packed and sent to charity, every surface meticulously scrubbed, every shadow banished. By nightfall, the room, Arthur's and hers, was hers again. I had forgotten the tranquility of this space, Eleanor mused, gazing out at Arthur's meticulously tended garden. I'm so sorry, Mom, Liam said, his voice raw with regret. I'm sorry we let them take it from you. I'm sorry I let them take anything from you. The anticipated return of the children from school Eleanor had been bracing herself for this conversation, the one that tore at her heart more than any other. Just then, Emma and Jake burst through the front door, their laughter echoing through the hall, their innocent calls for "Mom!" filling the air. Their bright faces fell as they saw only Liam and Eleanor in the living room, a palpable confusion clouding their youthful features. "Where's Mama Serafina?" Emma questioned, her backpack thudding softly to the floor. Liam, who had spent countless hours rehearsing this precise exchange, found his voice catching. Eleanor watched his struggle, her own heart aching. "Mama won't be returning home for some time," he murmured, drawing Emma and Jake into a tight embrace on the plush sofa. "She made some very serious errors concerning the company's funds, actions that were against the law, and she must now account for them." "What sort of missteps?" Jake inquired, his 7-year-old directness piercing the heavy silence. "She misappropriated finances that were not hers to take." Emma, with the dawning comprehension of a 10-year-old, gasped. "Did she steal from us?" "Regrettably, yes." "Whose money?" Liam's gaze sought Eleanor's, and she offered a firm, reassuring nod. The children, she knew, merited the stark truth, regardless of its sting. "From Vance Holdings, and yes, from Grandma Eleanor as well." Emma's delicate features contorted through a whirlwind of emotions. Initial bewilderment, then stunned disbelief, a flash of fleeting indignation, before settling into a profound, heartbreaking sorrow, a burden too heavy for such young shoulders. "Is that why she was so unkind to Grandma Eleanor?" Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. Unkind, a child's simple word, yet it held a universe of unspoken hurt. "Your mother didn't intend to be unkind," Liam began gently, choosing his words with immense care. "But her actions, they did cause Grandma Eleanor a great deal of pain, and that was unacceptable. Where is she presently?" Jake's query hung in the tense air. "She's incarcerated," Liam stated plainly, the unvarnished truth hanging heavy between them. Emma, her small frame trembling, began to weep silently. Not the theatrical outburst of a distressed child, but the quiet, agonizing tears of someone desperately trying to hold their composure. "Sweetheart," Eleanor said, sliding closer and wrapping an arm around Emma's shoulder. "This burden is not yours to carry. None of this is your responsibility." "But what if my classmates discover?" Emma whispered, her voice thick with fear. "What if they utter cruel words about Mama Serafina?" "Then you will bravely tell them that your mother made a profound error, but that single misstep does not define your worth," Eleanor asserted, her voice firm. "You and Jake possess innate goodness, intelligence, and compassion, and nothing your mother did can ever diminish those qualities. Will we still reside here with you, Grandma Eleanor?" Jake asked, his young eyes wide with uncertainty. "Absolutely, my love. This ancestral home is yours, a sanctuary for as long as your hearts desire it." In the ensuing days, a fragile new rhythm began to take hold. Eleanor took on the morning school runs, chauffeuring the children as Liam departed for Vance Holdings at dawn, confronting the colossal undertaking of unraveling Serafina's intricate financial devastation. Evening meals around Eleanor's antique kitchen table transformed, no longer punctuated by the intrusive blare of Bob's television or the endless, resentful adult chatter about welfare and others' imagined successes. The children, with an astonishing fortitude, began to adjust. Emma eagerly assisted Eleanor with dinner preparations each night, her curiosity piqued by ancestral recipes and culinary methods. Jake, venturing into the garage, unearthed Arthur's meticulously maintained woodworking tools, pleading with Eleanor to impart the forgotten skills of safe craftsmanship. "Grandma Eleanor, could I construct a birdhouse, just as Grandpa Arthur once did?" he inquired that Thursday evening, his small fingers tracing the grain of a smooth pine plank. "I believe Grandpa Arthur would be absolutely delighted," Eleanor replied, a tender memory surfacing of Arthur's gentle tutelage of Liam in that very garage 3 decades past. Yet it was Emma's probing question on Friday morning that truly revealed the depth of the children's internal grappling. "Grandma Eleanor," Emma began, her tone serious, as they stood together at the counter, carefully measuring flour for pancakes with scientific exactitude. "Were you truly becoming disoriented, as Mama Serafina claimed?" "No, my darling," Eleanor affirmed softly. "I was never confused. Your mother fabricated those stories." "But why would she weave such falsehoods?" "Because she desired others to believe I was no longer capable of managing my own affairs. That way, she could assume control of my finances and my home without any challenge." Emma considered this revelation, her small hands cracking eggs into the bowl with newfound reverence. "That was truly malevolent," she concluded. "Yes, it was," Eleanor agreed. "I regret that she inflicted such unkindness upon you." That unadorned apology from her granddaughter resonated more deeply than Serafina's entire campaign of insidious psychological torment. Children, Eleanor mused, possess an unblemished clarity regarding rectitude and wrongdoing, a clarity often muddied by adult complexities, relationships, and societal pressures. "Thank you, Emma," Eleanor said, her voice thick with emotion. "Your words mean a great deal." "Are you pleased she's no longer here?" Emma then asked, her innocent question prompting Eleanor into a moment of profound introspection. My response was measured. Emma's affection for Serafina, despite her misdeeds, remained a delicate thread I was unwilling to sever further. "I'm relieved the deceit and discord have ceased," I articulated at last. "Our family can now strive for genuine openness." Emma acknowledged my words with a quiet nod, resuming her focused task of cracking eggs. Later that afternoon, with the children safely at school and Liam immersed in the challenging work at Vance Holdings, Detective Shaw reached out with an update. Serafina Vance had been formally charged with a litany of offenses, including extensive fraud, numerous counts of forgery, and egregious elder abuse. Detective Shaw further confirmed that Serafina's parents were facing analogous accusations, in addition to their existing warrants from various other jurisdictions. "Will she serve time?" I inquired, the question hanging heavy. "Almost without a doubt," Shaw replied. "The prosecution is advocating a sentence of 8 to 12 years, considering the staggering financial scale and the manipulative psychological tactics involved." 8 to 12 years. Emma would be well into her college years, Jake approaching high school graduation by the time his mother regained her freedom. "How do you process that?" Detective Shaw probed gently. "Relief," I admitted, my voice tinged with the truth, "and a deep sadness for my grandchildren." "That's a perfectly natural duality," she observed. "You can recognize that justice has been served while simultaneously mourning the profound implications for your family." That evening, Liam returned from Vance Holdings, a glimmer of hope rekindled in his eyes, a stark contrast to his recent days. "I had productive meetings with the insurance firm and the bank today," he revealed over dinner. "We anticipate recovering roughly 60% of the capital Serafina diverted. It's not a complete restitution, but it's sufficient to stabilize the company." "What about this house?" Emma interjected, her voice small. "Serafina suggested you might have to sell Grandma's home." Liam's gaze shifted to me, unspoken apprehension in his eyes. "This house is going nowhere," I declared with unyielding conviction. "This is our ancestral home, a cornerstone of our family, and it will remain precisely where it belongs." Emma's face visibly lightened with profound relief, and Jake let out a genuine cheer. "Besides," I added, a smile that felt truly authentic, gracing my lips for the first time in what seemed like an eternity, "someone still needs to guide Jake in constructing that birdhouse with precision." 2 weeks following Serafina's arrest, a phone call arrived that fundamentally reshaped my understanding of my daughter-in-law's entire modus operandi. "Mrs. Vance, this is Agent Patricia Morrison with the FBI's Economic Crimes Division." The mention of the FBI sent a fresh jolt through me. This situation had clearly transcended mere local fraud allegations. Agent Morrison arranged to meet me at a discreet downtown bistro, a deliberate choice far from the bustling Vance Holdings offices and any potentially inquisitive ears. She was a woman of concise build in her 40s, possessing keen, assessing eyes and an unvarnished candor that was strangely reminiscent of Detective Shaw. "Mrs. Vance," she began without preamble, "Serafina's case is not an isolated incident. She operates within a significantly broader criminal enterprise, one that systematically preys on affluent, often elderly business owners nationwide." A profound chill snaked down my spine. "A network?" I managed, my voice barely a whisper. "Indeed," Agent Morrison confirmed. These are highly organized financial exploitation schemes. Young women meticulously infiltrate established families, secure access to valuable business assets, and then systematically deplete them over an extended period. Agent Morrison then activated a tablet, displaying a series of photographs. Serafina isn't even her true identity, she revealed. The individual in the FBI images bore an undeniable resemblance to my daughter-in-law, though appearing younger, with hair of a different shade and an entirely distinct surname, Sarah Michelle Collins. She has been engaged in this pattern for 12 years, Agent Morrison continued, her voice devoid of judgment, simply stating facts. 3 prior marriages, each to men whose families controlled prosperous enterprises. In every instance, she skillfully fractured the family's cohesion, effectively estranged the business owners from their rightful heirs, and absconded with hundreds of thousands of dollars before vanishing without a trace. But she didn't disappear this time, I murmured, a new layer of understanding dawning. No, Agent Morrison confirmed, her gaze direct. She made a pivotal miscalculation with your family. She then navigated to another document on her tablet, a meticulously detailed psychological profile that sent an unnerving shiver through me. Serafina's previous targets were consistently widowed men with adult children residing at a considerable distance, Agent Morrison explained, her tone chillingly dispassionate. She would marry her chosen victim, systematically consolidate control over his financial holdings, and then either patiently await a natural demise or, disturbingly, facilitate accidents. My breath caught in my throat. Arrange accidents? I whispered. The words barely formed. Her second husband perished in a highly suspicious car crash just 6 months after granting her power of attorney. Her third husband met his end in a fatal fall down the staircase of his own residence. Agent Morrison's steady gaze held a gravity that foreshadowed deeper, more sinister revelations. Disquieting. Each fatality had been subjected to official inquiry, yet never enough tangible proof emerged to declare them anything more than tragic accidents. The brutal implication hit me with the force of a physical blow. Serafina had been meticulously planning my demise. We concur, Agent Morrison confirmed, her voice devoid of inflection. The assisted living facility was likely merely a contingency. Once legal authority was fully transferred, Mrs. Vance, you would have ceased to be an asset and swiftly become a definitive liability. I pondered Serafina's relentless campaign against me, the systematic erosion of my credibility, the relentless gaslighting, her carefully plotted timeline to secure power of attorney by the Christmas holidays. Why had she deviated from her established modus operandi? Why risk targeting a family with young children? Because Vance Holdings represented a significantly greater bounty than any of her prior conquests. Agent Morrison explained, a stark realism in her tone. We estimate your family's total accumulated wealth to be in the vicinity of $2 million. She closed her tablet with a soft thud. Serafina got greedy, Mrs. Vance. She shattered her own meticulously observed pattern because the potential windfall was simply too immense to resist. What trajectory does this case take now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Serafina is facing a battery of federal charges, in addition to her state indictments. Agent Morrison elaborated. Interstate fraud, racketeering, conspiracy. She's confronting a potential sentence of 25 years to life, without the possibility of parole. 25 years to life. The realization settled heavily. Serafina Vance would almost certainly draw her last breath, confined within a prison's unforgiving walls. There is one final matter, Mrs. Vance, Agent Morrison stated, her gaze unwavering. We require your assistance. She then elucidated how Serafina was the pivotal key to dismantling an entire, sophisticated criminal enterprise. So many other families had been utterly devastated by eerily similar schemes, never grasping that they were victims of organized crime rather than simple familial avarice. We would be honored if you would consider testifying before a grand jury concerning Serafina's insidious methods. Your case, Mrs. Vance, is the most comprehensively documented example we possess of precisely how these intricate schemes are executed. Of course, I responded without hesitation. That very evening, I summoned every ounce of courage to contact Liam and divulge the terrifying extent of what I had just learned. The protracted silence that met my words on the other end of the line was so profound, I briefly feared the connection had severed. "Dad?" Emma's small voice eventually broke through, followed by Jake's muffled question. "Liam, are you still there?" I asked, my heart pounding. "I'm here," he finally replied, his voice a raw, hollow echo of his usual self. "I married a serial predator, Mom." "You married a woman who fabricated every single aspect of her identity, including her very name," I countered gently. "You couldn't possibly have known, darling. I brought her into our home. I allowed her near my children. I actually chose her distorted narratives over your undeniable truth, Mom, while she was actively plotting your murder." The sheer agony embedded in his voice was almost unbearable, a tangible weight through the phone line. "Liam, listen to me closely," I urged, struggling to keep my own emotions in check. Serafina successfully deceived federal investigators for over a decade. She completely duped 3 other unsuspecting families. She fooled entire police departments, coroners, and insurance corporations. You were a victim too, my son. I took a fortifying breath. But Emma and Jake, Liam, they are undeniably safe. They are enveloped in love. They will grow up with the profound knowledge that their real family values them infinitely more than any ephemeral sum of money, any superficial appearance, or anything else in this world. When Liam eventually returned home that night, he carried a familiar bottle of Arthur's cherished Irish whiskey and bore the weary countenance of a man who had aged several years in the span of a single afternoon. "How on earth do I explain this to them?" he asked, his voice strained, as he sank into Arthur's beloved armchair in the living room. "How do I tell my children that their mother is a professional criminal, a woman who may very well have murdered their grandmother?" "You don't. Not yet," I replied, pouring us both a generous measure of the rich amber liquid. "Maybe not ever. They already comprehend that their mother engaged in serious financial wrongdoing. For now, Liam, that is quite enough. As they mature, they will inevitably pose more questions," I continued softly, "and we will, together, answer them with unwavering honesty at an age-appropriate juncture." I raised my glass, a silent toast to Arthur's memory. He would be immensely proud of how we navigated this treacherous terrain. Liam managed a faint, melancholic smile. "He always insisted you possessed an inner fortitude far exceeding your outward demeanor," he murmured. "He truly had no idea, did he?" We drank in a newfound, companionable silence, the only sounds the joyful peals of Emma and Jake giggling in their bedrooms as they prepared for sleep. Normal sounds, family sounds, safe sounds. "Mom," Liam finally said quietly, his gaze meeting mine, "I am so deeply sorry. I'm sorry I didn't trust you. I'm sorry I allowed her calculated lies to eclipse your profound truth." "You don't ever need to apologize again, son," I affirmed, my voice tender. "We are family. We protect one another. That is the paramount truth, now and always." Yet even as I spoke those comforting words, my mind involuntarily replayed Agent Morrison's chilling revelation. Serafina's meticulous timeline, her systematic methodology for isolating me, her audacious plan to seize power of attorney by Christmas. If I had paused for even a moment longer, if I had not acted with such desperate urgency, had I not stumbled upon her clandestine thievery when I did, had I faltered in my courage to delve deeper or succumbed to her insidious gaslighting regarding my mental state, I would have faced a premature demise by the coming spring. Serafina harbored no mere intent to pilfer my assets. Her ultimate design was my eradication, meticulously orchestrated to appear as a natural occurrence or an unfortunate mishap. The woman Liam had once cherished, who had shared my home and table, even assisted my grandchildren with their studies, was a remorseless predator, clinically assessing the opportune moment to extinguish my life. That evening, as I lay in my own bed, within my own room, a sensation unlike any other during this grueling ordeal enveloped me, a chilling, visceral dread. Not fear of Serafina, for her capacity to inflict harm was now contained, but a profound terror at the agonizing proximity of her success. How many unsuspecting families, I wondered, were presently oblivious that their loved one's recent spouse was, in fact, a professional assassin, coldly appraising them for murder? The day of the grand jury testimony arrived, a frigid November morning, precisely a month after Serafina's apprehension. I once again donned my navy suit, a sartorial shield for moments of gravitas, and clutched a substantial folder brimming with every incriminating document, photograph, and fragment of evidence I had meticulously compiled throughout Serafina's campaign of destruction against me. Agent Morrison presented me to the lead prosecutor, a keen-eyed woman named Anya Sharma, renowned for her prowess in complex organized crime litigation. "Mrs. Vance, your testimony is truly indispensable to this investigation," Anya asserted. "Serafina Vance epitomizes a disturbing level of cunning, and the exhaustive documentation of her methodology will prove instrumental in safeguarding countless other families and dismantling her entire insidious network." The grand jury chamber proved even more formidable than I had anticipated, a daunting assembly of 23 strangers whose collective decision would determine whether Serafina faced federal indictments condemning her to prison for the remainder of her natural life. Yet as I commenced my narrative, recounting Serafina's systematic erosion of my family's trust and security, an astonishing metamorphosis transpired. My voice gained an unwavering resonance, my resolve crystalline. I wasn't merely detailing financial malfeasance. I became the voice for every elder dismissed, manipulated, or deliberately targeted by those who viewed their accumulated wealth as facile plunder. Serafina Vance did not merely embezzle funds, I stated, my gaze fixed squarely on the jury foreman. She audaciously usurped my very identity within my own family. She deliberately convinced my son, Liam, that my mental faculties were in rapid decline, all while meticulously plotting my murder the moment she seized dominion over my assets. She transformed my cherished home into a veritable gilded prison, where I was relegated to the status of an unwelcome intruder. She systematically expunged me from family photographs and milestone celebrations. She ruthlessly dismantled my bond with my son, simultaneously cultivating the persona of a solicitous daughter-in-law, selflessly attending to a challenging, elderly relative. I then presented the robust folder of undeniable evidence, the damning bank records, the meticulously forged contracts, the stark photographs of my forcibly modernized home, the chilling recordings of her conversations with Dr. Fielding and other critical witnesses. Yet Serafina had committed one monumental error. She profoundly underestimated the woman she sought to annihilate. 2 hours later, as I exited the federal edifice, a profound sense of liberation, unfamiliar for months, washed over me. Agent Morrison accompanied me to the parking structure. "The grand jury's indictment is virtually assured," she affirmed, her voice holding a note of triumph. "Your testimony was precisely the catalyst we required, and regarding her previous victims, this is the most gratifying aspect. Your irrefutable evidence, coupled with Serafina's established modus operandi, is enabling us to reopen investigations into every suspicious fatality linked to her prior unions. Should we succeed in proving her culpability in those men's deaths, their families may at long last find their measure of justice." Justice. A solitary word, yet one that encapsulated a profound and desperately needed balm for countless wounds. 3 months thence, I stood ensconced in my kitchen, orchestrating our family's Easter feast. This was the authentic family, forged anew from the wreckage of Serafina's duplicity. Liam, ever patient, guided Jake's small hands as they expertly carved the succulent ham, meticulously explaining the art of cutting against the grain. Emma, meanwhile, diligently arranged the antique china upon the table, her youthful concentration unwavering. Arthur's china, the heirloom pieces Serafina had tried to replace with austere, modern tableware. "Eleanor, how many guests are we expecting?" Emma inquired, meticulously placing the forks. "Only our immediate family," Eleanor replied, a quiet joy spreading across her granddaughter's face. "Excellent. I much prefer when it's just us, not a charade of familial duty or a calculated exploitation of shared history, but the profound bond of individuals committed to unwavering love and protection." Liam joined Eleanor at the table, a gentle clink of glasses as he poured a vintage Merlot. "The roast is perfectly done," he announced. Jake proved quite the capable carver. He certainly had a phenomenal mentor, just as I did. Liam's smile, free from the recent strain of his ill-fated marriage to Serafina, was truly radiant. "Mother, there's something significant I need to share." Eleanor carefully put down the ornate silver serving spoon, her senses instantly heightened by his solemn tone. "The restitution from the insurance claim has been finalized. We've secured a complete recovery of all the embezzled capital, along with substantial compensation for the emotional anguish Serafina inflicted." Liam withdrew a crisp envelope from his jacket pocket. "This portion is for you," Eleanor stated. "Liam, the funds are tied to Vance Holdings." "Vance Holdings is as much yours as it is mine now, and after your unwavering fight to salvage it, you are more than entitled to this." He gently pressed the thick envelope into Eleanor's hand. "Moreover, I'm formulating ambitious plans that necessitate your independent financial standing." "Ambitious plans?" Eleanor echoed, intrigued. "I envision a significant expansion for Vance Holdings, potentially establishing a new branch, perhaps even diversifying into bespoke luxury residences for discerning retirees." Liam's energy was palpable, his vision invigorating, but I absolutely require a partner I can implicitly trust, someone possessing unparalleled experience, profound insight, and an undeniable talent for identifying potential threats before they jeopardize everything we've painstakingly rebuilt. "A true partnership," Eleanor mused, "one founded on parity, profound deference, and collective governance." "Are you proposing employment, my son?" "I am offering you precisely what Arthur would have desired, Mother. An opportunity to construct an enduring legacy together." Later that night, with the kitchen immaculate and the children tucked into their beds, Liam and Eleanor settled onto the veranda, observing the twilight cast a mesmerizing palette of crimson and gold across Arthur's cherished garden. "Does she ever cross your mind?" Liam inquired softly. "Serafina, occasionally. Do you harbor hatred for her?" Eleanor paused, weighing her words. Hatred, she reflected, was a potent emotion, demanding an exhaustive emotional investment. "I despise her actions against our family. I detest the pain she inflicted upon you and the children, and I abhor the fact that she perceived me as utterly expendable." Eleanor took a measured sip of her wine. "But to genuinely hate Serafina as a person, that would grant her a dominion over my spirit that she unequivocally doesn't merit. I believe a part of me still cherishes her, and I resent that fact within myself." Liam's confession was raw. "Liam, you loved the idealized woman you believed her to be. That individual was entirely fictitious, yet the depth of your affection was unequivocally authentic. How do I convey this complex truth to Emma and Jake when they reach an understanding age?" "You convey the unvarnished truth, that on occasion individuals masquerade as someone they are not, and that their innocence in believing such a deception is never their culpability. You assure them that genuine affection is characterized by sincerity, guardianship, and benevolence, and they are worthy of nothing less." 6 months passed. Serafina Vance, whose authentic identity had been unveiled as Sarah Michelle Collins, received a lifetime sentence in federal prison without the prospect of parole. Her convictions included racketeering, 3 counts of murder, and masterminding an organized criminal enterprise. Eleanor chose not to be present for the pronouncement of judgment. Her time was far better spent guiding Emma in cultivating vibrant perennials in Arthur's garden beds and patiently instructing Jake in the intricate craft of constructing a robust birdhouse featuring meticulous dovetailed joints designed to endure for generations. The residence Serafina had so brazenly attempted to seize now pulsed with a vibrancy and joy it hadn't known since Arthur's passing. Liam and the children had officially made it their permanent home, not as casualties fleeing Serafina's malevolence, but as a deliberate commitment to collaboratively forge a brighter future. Vance Holdings flourished precisely as Liam had projected, with Eleanor Vance proudly listed as the senior partner on all corporate documents. Eleanor was no longer the matriarch whose wisdom was subtly disregarded, but an indispensable business partner whose seasoned judgment and acute intuition were profoundly esteemed and honored. On tranquil evenings, as the children diligently tackled their homework and Liam absorbed himself in strategic business plans, Eleanor would occasionally find herself reflecting. The chilling realization of how narrowly Serafina had missed her monstrous objective lingered, a stark reminder of the fragile balance between cunning and detection. Had I not unearthed that initial, seemingly minor financial anomaly in Vance Holdings' accounts, her insidious manipulation could have easily succeeded. Yet, overriding that apprehension was a profound gratitude for the unexpected gifts that often accompany the most profound trials, the chance to reclaim one's narrative, to rebuild not just a business, but a life, with newfound purpose. At 68, I finally felt truly unburdened, steering my own course rather than drifting along a path others had cunningly charted for me. It was, in every meaningful sense, an affirmation of a life fully lived, deeply appreciated, and fiercely protected. The initial shock of returning to a house meticulously transformed by Serafina, only to witness her panic-stricken face an hour later as the authorities arrived, felt like the culmination. But that wasn't the true ending of my tale. The real conclusion lay in the profound understanding that those who seek to shatter us often inadvertently illuminate the incredible depths of our own fortitude. And sometimes, against all odds, rectitude and perseverance truly prevail. Thank you for accompanying me on this journey. Should you find a resonance in this narrative, consider sharing your own experiences, for every voice has a story that deserves to be heard.